afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Miss.
Good man.
Okay, thank
Afternoon,
you,
Miss.
Joshua, for that wonderful prayer. Okay, in the last group, we were able to finish answering problem 5C. So now let's take up problem 5D. So which cluster is assigned to present problem 5D, DI 5D?
Miss, it was cluster three, my group. So I'll start
Okay,
presenting now. Okay, so
okay.
for problem 5D, Janelle Company produces various products. These products pass through different departments in the manufacturing process. The company's two producing departments are Departments A, where operations are mostly done by workers, and Department B, where mostly machines run the production. It has also two service departments, X and Y, in which costs are allocated to producing departments using the direct method. Cost of Department X is distributed on the basis of number of employees, while Department Y is based on machine hours. The company uses a uniform base in computing predetermined overhead rate for both producing departments, which is based on the LHS. Now, for requirement number one, what is the plant-wide predetermined factory overhead rate? So we got 36. How did we get 36 pesos? So first, the direct labor hours for departments A and B are added. That's 30 plus 5,000, 30K plus 5K equals 35K. And we totaled the estimated factory overhead for the different departments, and we got 320K plus 540K plus 150K plus 250K equals 1,260,000. Now, to get the plant-wide predetermined factory overhead rate, you divide the total estimated factory overhead by the total direct labor hours. So that would be 1,260,000 divided by 35,000, and you would get 36 pesos. Now, for number two,
That's 36 pesos
per hour,
what hour? Machine hour?
per direct labor hour,
So you
per
have to specify
DLH.
that.
Okay. Next, Miss, we have
Then
the
for the divisor, kindly indicate 35,000 DLH. Okay,
okay.
thank you. Next, number 2.
Now, for number two, it asks what is the factory overhead cost of job 507, and we got 1440. So how did we get that? First, for department A, you multiply 36, which is our answer for number 1, times 30 direct labor hours, since it is stated in the date for job 507 that in department A they use 30 direct labor hours, and you get 1080. Now for department B, you multiply 36 times 10 equals 360, and you add 1080 plus 360 equals 1440. So that would be the factory overhead cost for job 507.
Okay, or you simply just multiply 36 pesos per
But
DLR
times
by the
30.
total of 40 DLRs.
Yes, miss. Okay, next for number 3, it asks, is it appropriate to use a plant-wide factory overhead? Why or why not? So our group believes that plant-wide factory overhead may be inappropriate to use in this problem because of the varying products. Now, departmentalized overhead rate may be a better method because it allocates overhead costs based on department-specific rates, which take into account the unique characteristics of each department. Like, for example, it states in the problem itself that in Department A, operations are mostly done by workers, whereas in Department B, mostly machines run the production. So for requirement number 4, it asks what is the departmentalized factory overhead rate of the two producing departments. So for Department A, we got 15.67. So how did we get that? First, we uh, have the factory overhead cost of department A, which is 320K. And then we got the allocated factory overhead cost of department X. So how did we do that? First, we added the wait. We added first the number of employees, so that is 120 for department A and 30 for department B, and that is a total of number of 150 employees for the whole thing. Next, we divided that by 150,000 since that is the estimated factory overhead of department X. So that's 150,000 divided by 150 and you get 1,000. So you multiply 1,000 by 120, which is the number of employees for department A, and you get 120K. Now for the allocated factory overhead cost of department Y, we got 5 times 6,000. So how did we get the 5? We added first the machine hours, which is 6,000 plus 44,000, and that is 50,000. And you divide department-wise estimated factory overhead, 250,000 divided by the total machine hours. So that's 250,000 divided by 50,000 equals 5. So you multiply 5 to 6,000 because that is the machine hours used for department A, and you get 30,000. So now you total the whole thing. That's 320 plus 120 plus 30 equals 470,000. So that would be the total factory overhead cost for department A. Now, since we're looking for the rate, we divide the total factory overhead cost by the direct labor hours used, and that is 470,000 divided by 30,000 direct labor hours, and that would be 15.67 per DLH. Now for department B, we have the factory overhead cost, department B, that's 540,000. Then the allocated factory overhead cost, department X, this time we multiply 1,000 to 30 because that is the number of employees in department B, and you get 30K. Now for the allocated factory overhead cost for department Y, you multiply 5 to 44,000 since that is the machine hours department. So you get 220K. Now we total the whole thing to that's 540 plus 30 plus 220 equals 790K. And that would be the total factory overhead cost for department B. Now, since we're looking for the rate, we divide it by the direct labor hours, and that is 5,000. So 790K divided by 5K direct labor hours, and you would get 158 pesos per DLH. Now for number 5, what is the factory overhead cost?
Again, for number 4, you got the wrong answer. For the departmentalized overhead rate of production department B. For department A, your answer was, what was the departmentalized overhead rate of A?
That is 15.67 per DLH, miss.
Correct. But for B, you answered 158.
Yes, miss.
That is far from the right answer.
Oh.
Again, you try to figure out what was the total overhead assigned to B. This is using the, diba, you have estimated overhead before the allocation of B was 540,000.
Yes, miss.
Plus, how much is the amount allocated to B?
How much is allocated to B?
For its shares of service departments. Diba, it says here that production B, where mostly machines run the production. So in other words, your cost driver here will be the machine hours. So your divisor should be 44.
Okay.
Be the 44,000 machine hours. So the question now is, how much is your total overhead of production department B after its allocation, after receiving its share from the service departments? So before the allocation, B has an overhead of 540,000. The
Yes, miss.
question now is how much is the overhead ni B after the allocation of service department cost?
The total factory overhead cost, miss, is 790K.
790?
Thousand, miss. Yeah.
Okay. So in other words, the additional amount added to B is
250K, miss.
okay. So dividing the 790,000 by 44,000 machine hours, what would be the result?
That is 17.95 per machine hour, miss.
Okay, so that is the departmentalized overhead rate ni B. Dili
Okay.
ang 158.
Okay,
So
thank you,
make the
miss.
correction.
Uh, okay. So I will correct number 5 since we also got that wrong. 179.5. Now for number 5, the required is what is the factory overhead cost of job 507 using the departmentalized factory overhead rate. Now for department A, we multiply that with 15.67 times 30 equals 470 pesos. Now for
So the
department
last centavo.
oh okay. 15.67 times 30 would be 470.10.
Then
And
sa department B,
for department B, we multiplied 17.95 times 10 equals
no,
1.
no, 10 man.
Ay,
How many
sorry.
machine hours used by job 507?
Sayop, miss. 35 di ay. So, we correct this to 35 machine hours,
Equals?
17.95 times 35 is 628.25, and
Okay, add both.
we get 1,098.35 pesos. So that is the fact.
Okay, that's the answer to number 5. The overhead applied to job 507 using the departmentalized overhead rates would be 1,098 pesos and 35 centavos.
That's it for cluster 3, miss.
Okay, next, problem 5E.
Good afternoon. I'll be presenting problem 5E. So the problem is University of San Carlos offers only high-tech graduate level programs. USC has two principal operating departments, engineering and computer sciences, and two support departments, facility and technology, maintenance and enrollment services. The base used to allocate facility and technology maintenance is budgeted total maintenance hours. The base used to allocate enrollment services is number of credit hours for a department. The facility and technology maintenance budget is 350,000 pesos, while the enrollment services budget is 950,000 pesos. The following chart summarizes budgeted amounts and allocation base amounts used by each department. Then this is the chart. Here then the required is to use the direct method to allocate support costs to each of the two principal operating departments. Engineering and computer sciences prepare a schedule showing the support costs allocated to each department. So here we essentially just listed down the for the engineering. This is 2,000 F&T maintenance in hours, and then 5,000 for computer sciences for the uh, FNT facility and technology maintenance, and then for enrollment service, this is in credit hours, 24,000 for engineering, then computer sciences 36,000. Then the total is 7,000 for FNT maintenance, and then 60,000 for enrollment service. Then since we're going to use the direct method, we just directly allocate essentially based on what we have here for the FNT maintenance in hours, for example, and for the credit hours. So, for example, for the FNT maintenance, the cost to be allocated is 350,000. Now, the way we allocate that is by dividing. So for engineering, it's 2,000 out of a total of 7,000. So you multiply 350,000 by this figure, 2,000 over 7,000, and you get 100,000. The same as well for computer sciences. 350,000 multiplied by 5,000 over 7,000, you get 250,000. Then for enrollment service, it's the same as well, but this time for the credit hours, the one we placed here. So for engineering, it's 950,000 multiplied by 24,000 over 60,000, and you get 380,000. Then for computer sciences, it's 36,000 over 60,000. Then whatever that figure, you multiply that by the total, which is 950,000, and you get the to be allocated 570,000. And then since we're looking for the since what's required is to allocate the support costs to each of the two principal operating departments, we get the total. So this is already our answer. 480,000 in total to engineering and 820,000 in total to computer sciences.
What does 480,000 represent?
That's the total overhead cost. That's the total support costs we allocate to the engineering department.
Okay, so label it properly as total allocated service department costs. Total allocated SDC, service department costs. So 480,000 pesos for engineering and 820,000 for computer science. Draw a horizontal line above the final answer. Above.
Okay, miss. There, miss.
Then draw two lines after the final answer. So column D and D and F. D
I
and
I miss. Sige. Okay, miss.
I-undo na lang.
Ay ma-undo ang everything, miss. So D and F ra. Para D and F ra.
It should be below the amount on double lines.
Okay, miss. I think correct na. Oh, wala.
Hindi wala.
I think there. I think correct na ni miss. There.
Okay. Kana. So total allocated SDC ngun na kay service department cost.
Ay
Tama.
for note lang na miss para we'll know what SDC means.
Okay, next. Let's go to problem 5F.
So I'll be presenting problem 5F, Miss. So
Okay.
Aryata Company, let's start. Aryata Company uses job order cost accumulation method. Manufacturing costs for December were work in process December 1 for job 50 is $54,000. Materials and supplies requisition for job 50 is $45,000. Job 51, $37,500. Job 52, $25,500. And supplies, $3,500. For factory direct labor hours, job 50, 3,500, job 51, 3,000, job 52, 2,000, and labor cost, direct labor wages, $102,000, indirect labor wages, $15,000, supervisory salary, 6,000, building occupancy costs, $3,500, factory equipment costs, $6,000, and other factory costs, $5,000. Job 50 and 51 were completed in December. The predetermined factory overhead rate is $4.50 per direct labor hours. So requirement number 1, compute the total cost of job 50. So to compute the total cost, you just add the work in process beginning for job 50, which is 54,000 as stated in the given, and the direct materials, which is 45,000, also stated in the given. And for the direct labor hours, you just divide the direct labor hours for job 50 by the total direct labor hours of all the three jobs, which is 3,500 divided by 8,500, and then you multiply it by the direct labor wages, which is 102,000, you will get 42,000. And for the applied factory overhead, you just multiply the predetermined factory overhead rate, which is 4.50 in the given, and then multiply it by 3,500, which is the direct labor hours for job 50, and you will get 15,750.
and then you add everything up, you will get $156,750, which is the total cost of job 50. So for number two, determine the factory overhead cost applied to job 52 in December. So as stated, to get the applied factory overhead, you just multiply the predetermined rate times the direct labor hours. So for job 52, you have 4.50 times 2,000. That is $9,000, which is the applied factory overhead cost for job 52. And number three, compute the total cost compute the total factory overhead cost applied in December. So you get the total direct labor hours with three jobs, which is 3,500 plus 3,000 plus 2,000. You will get 8,500, and then you multiply it by 4.50, which is the predetermined factory overhead rate. You'll get 38,250, which is the total applied factory overhead in December.
For requirement number 4, we need to determine the actual factory overhead incurred in December. To get the actual factory overhead, we need to add the following amounts, which is from supply $3,500, indirect labor wages $15,000, supervisory salary $6,000, building occupancy cost $3,500, factory equipment cost $6,000, and other factory cost, which is $5,000, and which will give us the total of $39,000 actual factory overhead. Next is, how should the company dispose of any over or under applied factory overhead, assuming that the amount is not significant in relation to total factory overhead? To dispose of any insignificant factory overhead amount, we need to close it directly to cost of goods sold as a period cost. In a case where the factory overhead is underapplied, we need to debit cost of goods sold and credit factory overhead. And in a case where the factory overhead is overapplied, we need to debit factory overhead control and credit cost of goods sold. For the last requirement, we need to calculate the amount of over or under applied factory overhead for December. To get the total, we need to subtract the applied factory overhead from the actual factory overhead, which is 39,000 minus 38,250, and will give us a total of 750 under applied factory overhead.
Okay, next. Problem 5G.
So for problem 5G, Good Vibes Company has been distributing service department costs using the simultaneous method. It has two production departments, which are the machining and assembly, with two support departments, which are the maintenance and personnel. The current monthly data are in line with machining. The cost before distribution is 194,000. Service provided by maintenance is 40%, and service provided by personnel is 50%. Assembly, the cost before distribution is 185,000. Maintenance is 50%. Personnel is 30%. Maintenance cost before distribution 120,000 and personnel is 20%. Lastly, personnel cost before distribution is 117,600 and the maintenance is 10%. So the requirement for this activity determine the total factory overhead of machining department after distribution of service department costs. So to calculate the cost of service departments for maintenance, it is equal to 120,000 plus 20% plus, times personnel. And for personnel, is equal to 117,600 plus 10% times maintenance. So for maintenance cost for the computation, uh, first we're going to multiply 20% to 117,600. We get a total of 23,520, and 20% times 10% is equals to 10%. And then we're going to
Huh?
add
Again? 20% times
10% miss,
equals?
2%.
Okay, because you said 10% ang answer. Again.
Okay. So for 20% times 10%, it is equal to 2%. And
Okay.
then we're going to add 23,520 plus 120,000. We get a total of 143,520 plus 2% is times maintenance. And then we're going to transpose 2% to the left side, and then 100% minus 2%, we get 98%. So for 100%, we get that from the service provided from the maintenance and personnel. So 100% minus 2% is equals to 98%. And to get the maintenance cost, 143,520 divided by 19%, we get a total of 146,448.98.
Okay.
So next, now that we have the maintenance cost, we need to find the personnel cost. So using the maintenance cost of 146,448.98, we multiply it with the given personnel cost, which is 117,600 plus 10% times M. So multiply 10% times 146,448.98, we get 14,644.9 or 0.90, and add that to 117,600. So the total for the personnel cost is 132,244.9 or 0.90. Now that we have our maintenance cost and personnel cost, we can now form the table for the allocation of department costs. So we start with the given cost for machining assembly in the producing and maintenance personnel in the servicing from the given 194,000 for machining, 185,000 for assembly, 120,000 for maintenance, and 117,600 for personnel. For the maintenance cost that we computed, we put that under the row and column of maintenance here, 146,448.98. And for the personnel cost that we also computed, we put it under the personnel row and column. So again, 132,244.9. To get the maintenance machining computation, we multiply the maintenance cost with the given percentage, which is 40%, and we will get 58,579.59. To get the maintenance assembly computation, again, we multiply the maintenance cost with the given percentage, which is 50%. So maintenance assembly is equal to 73,224.49. And for the maintenance personnel computation, again, multiply maintenance cost, 146,448.98 times the given percentage, which is 10%, is equal to 14,644.9. For the personnel cost, we multiply the personnel cost with the machining percentage, which is 50% from the given, which is equal to 66,122.
For a while, huh? You are required to get only the total machining overhead after the distribution of SDC. So what is your answer?
Yes, miss. And then we add the total 194,000 plus 58,579.59 plus 66,122.45 is equal to 318,702.4 for the total factory overhead of the machining department after distribution of service department costs.
Okay. Aside from showing it in tabular form or table form, why don't you use the equation to solve for the value of total machining overhead after the allocation of SDC? What was your equation again to get the value of machining after allocation of the service department costs? M equals what's your equation to get the overhead ni machining department after allocating SDC? Your equation.
The equation, miss, is M equals the cost before distribution
Which
plus
is how much?
is 120,000
Huh?
plus the
120?
for maintenance.
I'm asking for machining. What is your equation for machining?
194,000
Plus, what is its share from maintenance? What is its share from personnel?
40% and ay,
Without using the tabular form or the table form, you solve it algebraically. Use having that equation for the total machining overhead. What was the overhead ni machining before allocation? Before the distribution?
194,000
Correct. Plus, what is its share from maintenance?
40%.
So 40% times M for maintenance plus what is its share from personnel?
50%, miss.
Okay, again, give us the equation to get the total machining overhead after allocating SDC.
So M equals 194,000 plus 40% M or 0.4 M plus 50% P or 0.5 P.
Okay, solve for the total machining overhead after such allocation using the equation you have stated earlier. So 194,000 plus 40% times what is the value for maintenance? Diba you computed that at
146,448.98, miss.
correct. Then plus 50% times the value for personnel, which is
132,244.9, miss.
correct. Okay, so continue so that you can get the final answer.
Same answer, miss. 318,702.04. And
Okay,
for the other one is 200.
correct.
Yes.
Ayaw na do not give what is not required in the problem. Just provide the answer what is required in the problem. Ang requirement ani is determine the total factory overhead of machining department after distribution of SDC. So, your answer should be 318,702.04. Wala na. Ayun na pag-solve sa other departments. Sa total machining overhead raman after allocation of SDC ang gipangita. Kana ray ihatag. Mao nang kanang makulangan mo sa oras sa pag-solve sa exam kay you are solving for other items not required in the problem. Just answer what is required in the problem. Di ba? Ayun na pag-solve for the other departments. Machining overhead ramang good ang gipangita after allocating the SDC. Gets mo? Is that clear, class?
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Okay, okay kana. So mana na ang total machining overhead after allocating SDC. Machining overhead after allocating SDC. Okay, so I think we were able to napailain. Ang sa theory na exercise 5-1. Which cluster is assigned to answer this 5-1 exercise? Theory.
Cluster 1, miss.
Sige. Share it now. Exercise 5-1.
Start na, miss.
Yes.
Statement number 1. Statement 1. Actual costing records the applied overhead cost. Statement 2. Normal costing records the overhead cost for using the standard overhead rate. Statement 3. In standard costing system, all production costs are recorded at predetermined amounts. Answer is A, true. Statements 1, 2, and 3 are true.
Okay, correct.
Number
So it's letter A. Right?
Yes, miss.
Okay, sige. Number 2.
Number 2, this method of overhead allocation is useful if the production department differs significantly in their process. Answer is B, departmentalized overhead rate.
Check. Number 3.
Among the various alternative denominator measures for applying overhead, which of the following is not commonly used? The answer is letter D, sales value of product produced.
Correct. Next, number 4.
When the amount of over-applied factory overhead is significant, the entry to close over-applied factory overhead will most likely require, answer is D, credits to cost of goods sold, finished goods inventory, and work-in-process inventory.
Check. Number 5.
Supplies needed for use in the factory are issued on the basis of, answer is B, materials requisition.
Check. Number 6.
In a job order system, the application of factory overhead is usually reflected in the general ledger as an increase in, answer is C, work in process control.
Okay, next, number 7.
When a manufacturing company has a highly automated plant producing several products, the most appropriate basis of applying factory overhead costs to work in progress is probably, answer is B, machine hours.
Correct. Next.
The logical explanation for an entry that includes a debit to overhead control and a credit to prepaid insurance is, answer is C, insurance for production equipment expired.
Correct. Next.
Number 9, over-applied factory overhead would result if, answer is B, factory overhead costs incurred were less than costs charged to production.
Correct. Next, number 10.
In service business using job order costing, the most commonly used basis for applying overhead to jobs is, answer is C, direct labor costs.
Correct. Number 11.
Bryce Gas OPC estimated Department A's overhead at $255,000 for the period based on an estimated volume of 100,000 direct labor hours. At the end of the period, the factory overhead control account for Department A had a balance of 265,500. Actual direct labor hours were 105,000. What was the over or under applied overhead? Answer is B for the period. Answer is B, over applied by 2,250.
How did you get that amount?
You divide 255,000 over 100,000, giving you the wait sa mesa makasapal 255,000 divided by 100,000 of 2.5 per direct labor hour. So
10 times. How many
then-
direct labor hours used?
the direct labor hours used was 105,000, so you multiply 2.5 times 105,000.
2.55, not 2.5.
Yes, miss. 2.55 times 105,000, and we get 2,600, 267,000 267,750. So this is your actual direct labor cost. And as discussed kanina,
Huh? Actual direct labor cost, no?
ay actual uh kaan, actual factory overhead. So to get
The actual applied overhead.
actual overhead,
Huh?
wait, sa ganito term. Uh shit.
When you divided 255,000 pesos by 100,000 direct labor hours, you get
Ah, you you got 2.55, which is the cost for per direct labor hour.
which is the
Cost
predetermined overhead rate per direct labor hour times the actual number of DLRs used is 105,000 DLH will give you the amount of 267,750 pesos as what?
as actual overhead.
Wrong.
Actual what? Applied overhead.
Multiply ka sa actual DLRs worked, DLRs used by the predetermined overhead rate. So what are you computing?
The applied overhead,
Okay,
miss.
that's the applied overhead. It's not the actual overhead. Pila man ang actual overhead?
255,000.
Huh? 255?
Ah,
The actual overhead is given at
265,500, miss.
okay, so how much is the difference between actual overhead and applied overhead?
2,250
With or without parentheses?
with parenthesis, miss.
Okay, because that represents what?
Over applied overhead.
Correct. That's why the answer is letter
B.
B.
O-
Okay,
over
next,
applied.
number 12.
The appropriate method for disposition of underapplied or overapplied factory overhead is answer is letter D, depends on the significance of the amount.
Correct. Number 13.
At the end of the year, KR Corporation has the following.
Company.
Ah,
Company na CO. Corporation ay CORP period.
okay, miss. At the end of the year, KR Company has the following account balances after applied factory overhead has been close to factory overhead control. Factory overhead control has a 1,000 credit. Cost of goods sold has 980,000 debit. Work in process has 38,000 debit. Finished goods has 82,000 debit. The most common treatment of the balance in factory overhead control would be answer is letter C, credit it to cost of goods sold.
Okay. Number 14.
Application rates for factory overhead best reflect anticipated fluctuations in sales over a cycle of years when they are computed under the concept of answer is B, normal capacity.
Correct. Number 15.
With the use of predetermined factory overhead rate based on expected volume and expected fixed costs, an underapplied overhead might be explained by which of the following situations? Answer is letter C. Actual volume is less than expected and actual fixed cost is greater than expected.
Okay. So, is your cluster assigned to answer exercise 5-2?
No, miss.
Different na na
Another
cluster, miss.
Okay, sige. So, exercise 5-2 na ta.
Okay, so for during the current accounting period, a manufacturing company purchased 70,000 of raw materials, of which 50,000 pesos of direct materials and 5,000 pesos of indirect materials were used in the production. The company also incurred 45,000 pesos of the total labor cost and 20,000 pesos of other factory overhead costs. An analysis of the work in process control account revealed 40,000 pesos of direct labor costs. From the foregoing, what is the total amount accumulated in the factory overhead control account? So to compute for this, we add indirect materials for 5,000 pesos, indirect labor for 5,000 pesos, which is 45,000 minus 40,000, we get 5,000. And other overhead cost, which is 20,000 pesos. So 5,000 plus 5,000 plus 20,000, we get a total overhead cost of 30,000 pesos.
Okay, check. Next, exercise 5-3.
Okay, for exercise 5-3, bread pan has two departments, processing and packaging. Bread pan incorporates overhead and processing based on machine hours and on direct labor costs and packaging. The following information is available for July. For processing is 1,500 and packaging is 1 hours. Direct labor cost for processing is 44,500 pesos and 23,000 pesos for packaging. Applied overhead for processing 50,000 and 61,750 for packaging. We need to compute the overhead application per machine hour for processing. The formula used is estimated factor divided by estimated machine hours. So we divided 55,000 by the 2,500 machine hours of processing. So it is 22 pesos per machine hour. The second requirement is to compute for the overhead application rate for packaging. We need to divide the estimated factory overhead over the estimated direct labor cost. So it is 51,750 pesos divided by 23,000 pesos. So after that, we need to multiply it to 100. So it equals to 225% of direct labor cost.
Okay. Next, exercise 5-4.
So now let's move to exercise 5-4. So the sensitive corporate company manufactures picture frames. The following costs relate to the current production run. Estimated overhead exclusive of spoilage is 160,000. Spoilage estimated is 25,000. Sales value of spoiled frames is 11,500 and labor hours is for 100,000. So the actual cost of spoilage frame is 7 pesos. During the period, 170 frames are spoiled. Each spoiled frame can be sold for 4 pesos. The spoilage is considered part of all jobs. Compute for the predetermined overhead per direct labor hour. So in order to get the direct labor hours, we need to use the formula factory overhead divided by direct labor hours. So it would be 160,000 divided by 100,000 labor hour is equal to 1.60 pesos per direct labor hour.
Wait, ha? Remember, there is spoilage. Ang 160,000 excluded the spoilage cost. Isn't it?
Yes, miss.
You forgot already. This is not the first time we encountered this problem. It was taken up also in chapter 3. Similar data ra gyud siya. As in, why did you not include the spoilage cost to your total overhead? Wa pa may labot ang spoilage cost anang 160,000. So you still have to add the spoilage cost of 25,000. Therefore, the total amount of adjusted overhead becomes 185,000.
185,000.
Then minus the salvage value of the spoiled frame, which is pilay total salvage value sa spoiled frame.
$11,500, miss.
Pila day selling price sa spoiled frame?
4 pesos, miss.
Times how many frames spoiled?
170, miss. So it will be 680.
Sales value. Di ba given naman ang sales value sa spoiled frames?
Yes, miss. 11,500.
Therefore, what is the net cost of spoilage? The unrecoverable cost of spoilage. $11,500 raman ang sales value sa spoiled frame. So what is the unrecovered, what is the balance of your FOC account, if that is the case?
173,500, miss.
Then divide it by
Divided by 100,000 direct labor hour is equal to
equals
1.735 or 1.74 per direct labor hour, miss.
okay, so that should be the correct answer for this exercise. Do we have the same answer as what we have in chapter 3 for the same, I think the same data raman siguro na sa chapter 3? What exercise was that? Lahi og amount but the same concept. Katong sa spoiled picture frame. Lahi dig amount pero the same concept, di ba? I think that's similar to exercise 3-6. No, lahi lang ang mga amounts involved. Try to check your exercise 3-6. Diba to answer in diba sa exercise 3-6, unsa to answer natos number 1 for the predetermined overhead rate? Diba we added 400,000 and 62,500. So your numerator is 462,500 minus the sales value of 28,750. So pilay balance. What is 462,500 minus 28,750? Then divide it by 250,000 labor hours. So what's the answer there in the first requirement sa exercise 3-6?
1.74, miss.
Oh, so parihara no, 1.735 or 1.74?
Yes, miss.
Yes.
Okay. So next, ang pinaka-last nga exercise, kay we already answered exercise 5-6 and the rest that follows. So exercise 5-5 na lang. Which cluster is assigned to answer exercise 5-5?
Cluster 5, ma'am.
Sige.
Okay, so for this exercise, we are tasked to determine the most appropriate allocation base to be used by the following indirect departmental costs. So for
Okay.
number 1, building rent, it will be allocated based on square footage.
Correct. Number 2.
Number 2, property tax should be allocated based on square footage again.
Okay. Number 3.
Depreciation for buildings, square footage.
Okay.
Fire insurance, square footage.
Okay. Number
Buil-
5.
Building repairs, square footage.
Okay. Number 6.
Gas utility, square footage.
Okay. Number 7.
Superintendents, it will be allocated based on the number of employees.
Okay. Number 8.
Telephone, number of telephones.
Correct. Number 9.
Workers' compensation insurance will be based on department payroll.
Okay. Number 10.
Fixed portion of electricity would be for kilowatt hours.
Yes, that can be in terms of kilowatt hours. Pwede rasad siya sa square footage for the portion that is using the electricity, or for the fixed portion of the electricity, because the amount is fixed, no, regardless of its consumption. So based on the square footage, fixed portion of electricity. Okay. The number 11 is, ang variable portion is based on,
Kilowatt hours, ma'am.
yes, because the consumption is measured in terms of kilowatt hours. So that ends up chapter 5. Are there any questions? Nakashare na si group 1 and 3 sa discussion this morning.
So far, group 3, miss. We're waiting for
Nakashare?
group 1
Apat
pa.
na 1.
Yes,
Oh,
miss.
So you wait for the shared recorded discussion sa group 1. 1 na lang ang no? Na-share na sa group 3.
Yes, miss. Group 3 shared theirs na. We're waiting for group 1 na lang, miss.
Okay. Sige. So, are there any questions for chapter 5? So after chapter 5, we now take up chapter 4, which is about process costing. Okay, so in chapter 1 and 2, it was pointed out, no, in chapter 2 rather, it was pointed out ang similarities and differences between job order costing and process costing. They are similar in the sense that the materials used, direct labor cost, and the overhead applied to production will have to be computed. And it follows the same journal entries, and the cost flow will also be similar. That is from work in process account to FG, and then FG to cost of goods sold. So that is the aspect wherein they are similar. The differences would be in terms of how the costs will be accumulated. How the cost will be accumulated. So in job order costing, they accumulate the costs per job order or customer's order. Whereas in process costing, they accumulate the costs per process or per department where the product is processed. Another distinction between job order and process costing is that in job order costing, the report that discloses the cost of production is the job order cost sheet. So which is the subsidiary record for the controlling account work in process. So in using the work in process account, sa job order costing, the work in process there represents the cost of each cost element, or the cost of materials used, the cost of labor as well as the cost of overhead applied to each job. Whereas in process costing, the cost of production will not be done per customer's order or job order, but per process or per department, which is supposed to have the monthly cost of production report. So that is the monthly report that should be made by the company's cost accountant. So the cost accountant should not stay put in his office, but he should also get the necessary information from the production supervisor or from the production engineer or even the production manager to get the data that he needs in preparing the monthly cost of production report or CPR. So he may either go to the office of the production supervisor or production engineer or production manager, or he may go directly to the production area and make an inquiry so that he will be able to understand the flow of production in that particular department, so that he understands the processes involved. So if he knows the processes involved, he knows the flow of the units, he knows the flow of the cost from work in process of a particular department until it reaches the final stage of completion. So in process costing, you will still be using work in process inventory accounts, even the material account, which is also maintained under the work in process once it is used in the production department. So with the labor cost, which is assigned as part of the amount charged to work in process of that particular department or process. So in job order costing, your work in process there is for each cost element. So work in process for materials, not a work in process for direct labor cost, not a work in process for the overhead applied to a particular job. In process costing, we also use the same account, work in process. However, the work in process will be accumulated per department or process. So you will have the work in process of Department A. So how much is the work in process charged to Department A for the month? How much is the work in process charged to Department B for the month? How much is the work in process C for the month? So by departments, ang pag-accumulate sa costs charged to the work in process account. Whereas sa job order costing, the work in process is maintained for each cost element charged to a particular job or customer's order. Okay, so another distinction also is that in job order costing, you will the subsidiary record for the work in process account is the job order cost sheet, whereas the subsidiary record in process costing to see how much is the cost incurred by a particular department or process will be the cost of production report. So now we will learn how to prepare this cost of production report. Now, in a manufacturing firm, it is normal to have a separate department where the cost accountant is the department head. So we call it as the cost department. The company's cost accountant is under the supervision of the general accountant or the comptroller or chief accountant. So if the controller would like to know how much is the production cost incurred for the month, he can get that information directly from the company's cost accountant. So the cost accountant will also have its own staff, the junior cost accounting staff, who will be assisting the company's cost accountant. So just like in an audit department or auditing office, a company, it is headed by the chief or the internal auditor or the head of the internal audit office. So he has also his own staff to work with him to assist the internal auditor of the company. But it is the cost department that is under the supervision of the controller's office. That is under the controller's office. Okay, so the question now is, what information can you find in the monthly cost of production report? So this CPR or cost of production report will be made at the end of every month. That's why when you prepare the CPR, you write first the main heading at the center of your paper. And the main heading consists of the company's name or business name, then followed by the name of the report being made, cost of production report. Then on the third line will be the period covered for such report. So that covers 1 month na operations. So you can say for the month ended, let us say March 31, 2023. So you summarize the activities and the costs incurred for the month of March. So in making the cost of production report, you have to know first what method of costing is used by the company. So for companies that are using process costing, either they will use first in, first out method, or they will use the average costing method or the weighted average method. Those are the two methods used in process costing. Either the company uses first in, first out, or it uses the weighted average method. So after knowing which method is used by the company, the next thing that you'll have to do is prepare the quantity schedule. And when you make the quantity schedule, it consists or it follows the equation sources should be equal to the targets. S is equal to T. S for sources, T for the targets. So as mentioned in chapter 4, the sources here, that answers the question where the units come from. Asa gikan ang units assigned this month for the department to work on. So there are 3 possible sources of where the units come from? One is it can be from work in process beginning. In other words, there were some units that were started last month. But they were not completed yet as of the end of last month. That is why you have to continue working on them this month. So that is from work in process beginning, or from last month's production, and which is continued this month. The second possible source will be from PD. PD for previous department. So it's possible that this department is a subsequent department. So either you are the first department or a subsequent department. And you will know that you are the subsequent department because you follow another department. So like for example, if there are 3 departments, A, B, and C, A is the originating department or the initial or first department, while B and C are the subsequent departments. So you will know that that is a subsequent department because it follows it has its previous department. It follows a previous department. So B is a subsequent department because it follows department A. C is also a subsequent department because it follows department B. So only A has no PD, has no previous department. So if you are department B, it is expected that the output, that the completed units in the previous department shall be forwarded for further processing in the next department, which is department B. Therefore, one of the sources for the subsequent department is those coming from the previous department. So, kay gi-forward man sa ila, that means this department will have to work on the units that they receive from PD, received from previous department. Or you can say transferred in from the previous department. So ang transferred out ni Department A, maoy transferred in kang Department B. Ang finished and transferred out ni B, maoy transferred in ni Department C. So is that understood?
Yes,
ma'am.
miss.
Okay. Another possible source will be from this month's production, meaning these are the units started just this month. Gisugdan karong buwan na. But we do not know what happened. Were they all completed this month, or are they still part of the units still in process at the end of this month? So take note, there are 3 sources of the units assigned to be worked on this month in this department. One is from work in process beginning. Those were the units started last month but still in process. Wa pa mahuman, tiwasonon pa this month. Second source would be from PD, from previous department. So ang transferred out sa previous department will be the ones received by the subsequent department. So another source would be from this department's current production, meaning these are the units just started in this department this month. Ang katong gisugdan pagtrabaho in this department just this month. So those are the 3 sources of the units assigned to be worked on this month in this department. So the next question now is, what happened to these three sources by the end of this month? Are they part of the finished units and transferred out to the next department or transferred out to the warehouse? Or are the units completed or finished but not transferred out? Instead, they are still on hand. So that is what we call finished and on hand. Nahuman pero wala pa gibalhin. It is still within this department, but the production process is already complete. It is 100% complete as to materials, labor, and overhead. Otherwise, if any of the three cost elements of production will be less than 100% complete, then they are still part of your work in process for the month. Gets niyo? Bisan pag moingon kag 99% complete ang gi-process this month. Kung 99% complete, kulang pa by 1%. Unless it is spoiled or they are said to be defective. Pero once the process has been completed na, then that will be transferred out to the next department for subsequent processing. Or if there is no more subsequent processes to be done, then that will transferred out to the warehouse awaiting delivery or shipment. So, duha ra gyud ang posible tulo ra gani ang possible target or destination. So, it can be part of the finished units. The finished units could be part of your finished and transferred out, or it can be part of finished and on hand. The other one, if they are not part of the finished units, whether transferred out or still on hand, they may still be in process. Hence, it will be part of the work in process at the end of the month for that particular department or process. So in other words, ang target ani is either part siya sa finished units or part siya sa unfinished or units still in process at the end of this month. So is that clear?
Yes, miss.
Sige ha, mukuha sa kog akong mag-share sa ko og worksheet. I'd like to show you this equation again. Wala na ba ko Excel? Time pa. Where is my Excel? Okay. Can you see the spreadsheet on the screen?
Yes, miss. I can see it, Ramis.
Okay. Two. Okay, Arial, huh? So source should always be equal to the targets. Gamay ani. Right. Insert. Okay, view. Zoom na lang. Okay, this is the equation we use in process costing. So sources should always be equal to your target. This should be your guide in making the quantity schedule. So the first part of your monthly cost of production report is the quantity schedule. So in the quantity schedule, you will disclose the sources, such as you call it IPB, in process beginning, or that is your work in process beginning. The unit started last month, followed by started and placed into process. Or if you are a subsequent department, then you will have another source, which is RPD, received from previous department. Or you can say, or units transferred in, or transferred in. So those are the three possible sources. The targets shall include finished and transferred, or F&T. So that's the first target, followed by another possible target is finished but still on hand. And lastly, the IPE, work in process at the end of the month. So both IPB and IPE will have a parenthetical notation. So if the parenthetical notation is just, it would say 1/3, fraction lang, or let us say 1/4 na lang. Let us say your parenthetical notation is 1/4, which is the same as 25%. So if that is the parenthetical notation, that tells you that the units started last month were 25% or 1/4 complete as to materials, 1/4 complete as to labor, and 1/4 complete as to overhead. So uniform ang tulo ka cost elements. Another possible parenthetical notation for work in process beginning or even for work in process end, you would say all M meaning 100% complete as to materials. Then you would say 2/5 complete as to conversion costs. Ano na siya mo? Okay, kana. So that is the another possible parenthetical notation where the percentage applied to materials is not the same as the percentage applied to labor and overhead. Only labor and overhead are the same. That's 2/5 complete. Another possible parenthetical notation is you would say 80% complete as to materials, 60% complete as to labor, and 40% complete as to overhead. So notice that the percentage applied to each cost element varies. So with this first parenthetical notation, kung fraction lang or percentage lang nakabutang, wala naka-indicate ang materials, labor, and overhead, that is assumed to be uniform or even application of materials, labor, and overhead. But if the parenthetical notation is like this, kana, or this one, the percentage applied to M is not the same percentage applied to labor and overhead. So we say that there is uneven application of materials, labor, and overhead. Now, why is it important to have this parenthetical notation? Because this will serve as your guide as to how many columns are you going to provide to compute for equivalent units produced, or EUP. In some books, EUP is shortened as EP, equivalent production. So not at all times that this quantity schedule will be given completely. So if let us say your F&T is 12,000, your FOH is 10,000, your IPB is 10, let us say this is 14,000. Your SIP is 30,000. Your RPD received from previous department is, let us say, 6,000. So draw a horizontal line separating the sources from the target. Since kompleto ang sources, get the total. So the total sources here is equivalent to 50,000 units. So there are 50,000 units to be accounted for in this department. Or there are 50,000 units to be worked on in this department. Out of 50,000, 12,000 units were finished and transferred out. 10,000 units were finished but still on hand. Therefore, the remaining units are still in process. The question is, how many units are still in process at the end of this month? So what you're going to do is total sources minus the total of the given targets. What is 50 minus 22?
28, Miss.
So 28,000 will be identified as your finished and on hand. Sorry, work in process and. So that's the missing item. Gets niyo? Kung kompleto ang targets, let us say the target is 3,500 F&T, then you have FOH of 1,500. Your IPE is 15,000. Your SIP is 500. Your RPD is 4,500. Therefore, how many units is your IPB? So draw a horizontal line separating the sources from the targets. So kompleto man ang targets. So our targets here is 20,000. 20,000 ba?
Yes, Miss.
Yes, the total targets is 20,000 minus the two given sources totaling 5,000. So 20,000 minus 5,000. Therefore, our work in process beginning is
15,000, Miss.
okay, 15,000 units ang work in process beginning. So that is how you determine the missing item. Okay, anyway, we will have more on this by next meeting. Are there any questions? So next week, I might give you your first mastery test after the midterm. Oh, wait. Ako na lang idungan ang chapter 4 and 5 nga mastery test or shall we have a separate exam for chapter 5? And another separate exam for chapter 4? Kung mag-separate exam ta sa chapter 5, then I will give it to you next week. Probably by Wednesday. But if you want it to be combined na lang sa chapter 4, then after discussing chapter 4, we shall have the mastery test for both chapter 4 and 5 combined. So, what is your preference?
Miss, dungan na lang, Miss.
Idungan. Any objection from the other members of this class? So after na lang, mahumantag discuss sa chapter 4. Okay?
Yes, miss. When siya, miss, ang test, miss, if idungan, miss?
Depende ko ano saan na to mahumag-discuss.
Ang chapter 4. Okay, miss. Thank you, miss.
Oh. So, di good na next week. Di ba? Di good na next week. Kaya di pa man na mahuman by next week. Okay, so that is all for today. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.
Excuse
Bye,
me, miss.
thank
I have a
you.
few concerns.
Unsa?
First, miss, kay ang sa pre-midterms, good, miss, katong na bonus points, miss. I think napay some people, miss, na wala ni change lang score, miss.
Wala ni change sa score?
Yes, miss.
Nganong wala man?
pre-midterms, miss. Like, even if na bonus, like, same pa lang score sa before.
Kung girongan sa canvas, then you add, pila to? 2 points man to, no?
Yes, miss, I think so.
Kana. Pero kung na-checkan sa canvas ang ilang answer, di na ako mag-add og 2. Otherwise, maduble.
Yes, miss. So sa imo ra, miss, we won't do anything about it lang, miss.
What do you mean by sa imo? I don't do
Like on your side, miss, ba, na you'll change the score?
I'll change the score. Ako manggong
When you record it.
review kung tinud-an ay bagyod nga wala siya matagay points sa canvas.
Okay, miss.
Kaya I have the score man given by canvas. So with the correction, so i-check na ko if honest bagyod ang student nga nihatag sa correct nga sa iyang new nga score. Diba?
Okay, miss. Okay, miss.
Any other concerns?
So we won't need to do anything lang, miss, regarding that, miss.
The class rep will have to give me the new score for all the students.
All the students, miss. Sige, miss. I'll send it to you, miss. Sige.
I-alphabetical according to itong alphabetical listing nato sa class.
Okay, miss. Then aside
Yeah,
from
new
that,
score i-reflect.
yes, miss. Ang new score lang nila taking into consideration na the bonus points. Sige, thank you, miss. Then aside from that, miss, kay for our schedule next week, miss, kay we'll follow the memo ra, miss, nga face-to-face Monday and then online on Wednesday.
Yes.
Okay, miss. Thank you, miss.
Is that being followed also by your other classes?
Yes, miss. Our other teachers are doing the same as well, miss.
So nag-online sila.
Yeah, online
So no
sa
need for
Wednesday,
you to
miss.
go to school.
Yes, miss.
Pero kung mag-online ta, I would prefer it to be kanang synchronous ta.
Okay, miss.
Online pero synchronous ta. Meaning mag-discuss gid ta. Magkita gid ta dire sa screen.
Okay, miss.
Okay, any other
Noted.
concerns, please? Ma-view naman ninyo ang canvas, di ba? Di ba inyo man tong nakita inyong mga scores? Yanasan mo i-copy sa questions?
Yes, miss. Makita pa until now, miss.
Sige. So, thank you. Bye.
Thank you, miss. Bye.
Goodbye and thank you, Miss.